Hi, I'm Nate Charles, and welcome back to the Rule of Law Brief. As we approach the 4th of July and the 250th anniversary of the United States, we're going to spend the next few weeks talking about what it means to be a conscientious American citizen. We're going to talk about how it is that we prepare for this moment. And let me start with a confession. I'm not really in a celebratory mood right now. At this moment, it's pretty easy to look around the country and feel discouraged. It's easy to look at our politics, our institutions, our public discourse, and wonder whether there's really anything worth celebrating at all. I understand that feeling because I share it. When I was younger, I occasionally wondered what America would look like when it turned 250 years old. I mean, I wasn't even sure at some points that I would live long enough to see it, but here we are. And if I'm being honest, this isn't exactly what I hoped America would look like. But over the weekend, my wife and I visited the new Thaddeus Stevens and Lydia Hamilton Smith Center for History and Democracy in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Now, I'm not saying you need to travel to Lancaster, but if you happen to find yourself in the area, I highly recommend it. I left feeling just a little bit better than I did when I walked in. Not because the museum tells a comforting story. It doesn't. Thaddeus Stevens spent much of his life confronting some of the greatest failures in American history, and he didn't live to see full resolution of those issues. Slavery, white supremacy, the denial of basic human rights. In other words, the refusal, not just the failure, but the refusal of his own country to live up to its stated principles. He understood better than most that America was falling short of its ideals, but he never gave up, not for a second. He dedicated his entire life to defending those ideals, even though his own country and his own communities were falling way short. And one of the things that I appreciated most about the museum is that it isn't really just about Thaddeus Stevens and Lydia Hamilton Smith. In far more ways, the museum is about the American struggle to become better than we were. Much, if not most, of the museum focuses on civil rights and the Reconstruction amendments that Thaddeus Stevens played such an important role in advancing after the Civil War. Now, if you've seen the recent movie Lincoln, you know the role that Thaddeus Stevens played in passing the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery. But he was also intimately involved in the 14th Amendment, which guaranteed due process and equal protection of the laws and birthright citizenship, and the 15th Amendment, that eventually protected the right to vote regardless of race. Taken together, the three Reconstruction Amendments, as they're collectively known, represent one of the most important constitutional transformations in American history. And they may be the most important example of the United States recognizing its own shortcomings and attempting to correct them. The Constitution specifically mentions forming a more perfect union. Not a perfect union, because that's impossible. And that's an important distinction. The American project was never about claiming perfection. In fact, in a lot of ways, it is un-American to claim perfection. America has never been about beating our chests, celebrating our power, or pretending that we have all the answers. Quite frankly, I don't believe in American exceptionalism. I don't think Americans are inherently better than anyone. The only thing that's exceptional about America is the ideals that we have constantly failed to live up to, but never cease striving to achieve. And most importantly, that our nation should be governed by the rule of law rather than the rule of men. All government derives its legitimacy from the consent of the governed. Individual rights should never depend on who happens to hold power at any given moment. These are remarkable ideals. These are exceptional ideals, even if the stewards of those ideals are less than exceptional people. These ideals aren't just gifts, they are responsibilities. It is not and never has been the duty of an American citizen to worship the country as it is. The duty of American citizenship is to be stewards of the principles that justify the country's existence in the first place. That is what Thaddeus Stevens understood. He knew that his America wasn't the America it needed to be. But instead of giving up on the country, he spent his life pushing it towards what it could be. And maybe that's the right approach to America's 250th birthday. I don't think this momentous event is time for self-congratulation, but nor do I believe that it's a time for despair. It's a time to renew our resolve in our role as stewards of the American ideals. It's a time to ask whether we have been faithful in our pursuit of a more perfect union. It's time for us to renew our resolve to hand off a better version of the republic than we inherited. This is a moment to ask whether we are protecting the rule of law, preserving constitutional government, and defending the liberties that previous generations entrusted to us. And over the next several videos, that's what we're going to talk about. Not how to make America look stronger or make people bend to our will. Instead, we're going to talk about how we make America better. Because unlike a tawdry fistfight on the south lawn of the White House, citizenship is not a spectator sport. The republic survives only if each generation chooses anew to become the stewards of our ideals.